Today's CASPer questions and our expert analysis and responses will help you tackle any CASPer scenario question that may come your way during the test. We will cover CASPer scenario answer strategies and give you expert analysis on how to answer each follow-up question. Hi, my name is Chris and I'm an admissions associate here at BeMo. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe on whatever social media channel you're watching this from now so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. If you would like us to help you get ready for CASPer, visit CASPerTestPrep.com to schedule your free initial consultation. As a quick tip, check out the timestamps in the description of this video to navigate to specific sections of the video that you're interested in. Here's what we're going to cover: how to structure your answers to CASPer scenario questions, sample CASPer scenario questions, and our expert response. By the way, we're giving away $50 Amazon gift cards every week to the best comments and questions, so comment below for a chance to win. There's this one thing that will dramatically increase your CASPer score. I'll explain in the end of the video, so keep watching to find out. Now let's get started. When you're faced with a CASPer scenario follow-up question, it's important to understand your role and what kind of issue you're being presented with. For example, is it autonomy support, informed consent, professional boundaries, conflict resolution, and so on? Most importantly, you must identify the most vulnerable party in the situation. Once you identify the issue, you must outline practical solutions to resolve the situation. First and foremost, you must consider solutions from the viewpoint of the vulnerable party before considering anyone else in the scenario. However, you must remain objective and non-judgmental to all parties involved in the situation. It is a tough balancing act, but you must try to maneuver between all the parties involved in the situation. Think of several practical solutions, then choose the most rational, ethical, legal, and scientifically sound decision that causes the least amount of harm to everyone involved or indirectly involved. A good way to structure your answer to scenario follow-up questions is to use if-then sentence structure. This way, you demonstrate that you have considered multiple points of view and have included all the parties in your consideration. It is important to know that although many CASPer situations and questions are ethically challenging, you should always try to actively engage with the problem. Doing nothing in the situation is not going to get you a high score on the test. You must at least show initiative by gathering necessary information. If you simply ignore the altercation or write, "I am not going to do anything because it's none of my business," you will surely do poorly on your test. Here's the prompt. You are at the airport with your family preparing to board a plane to your favorite vacation destination. The flight attendants prepare to begin calling passengers for boarding. Prior to calling for passengers in first class, the attendant asks for any passengers with disabilities to come forward for priority boarding. A couple, a young man and a woman in their mid to late 20s, begins moving towards the desk. The man is carrying all of their carry-on baggage, and they are smiling and laughing, with no visible complications with movement in either of them, and neither has any kind of visible mobility issues, like a cane, crutches, wheelchair, etc. As they move past you, the woman in line behind you loudly sighs. You turn to look at her, and she is glancing around at your fellow passengers, visibly annoyed. She loudly proclaims, "This is unbelievable, look at them." She notices you looking at her, catches your eye, and looks at you expectantly. "You know what I mean, right?" she says to you, gesturing towards the couple, who have overheard this and look visibly upset. The questions are as follows. Number 1, what would you do in this situation? Number 2, to use accessible parking spaces, people with disabilities must display a special placard or have special license plates on their cars. Do you think similar documentation should be required for accommodations like the one posited in the scenario, priority boarding on a flight? Why or why not? Number 3, can you describe a time when you intervened on behalf of someone else in a public space? Take a moment to reflect on these questions. Now let's get to the expert responses to these follow-up questions. This scenario presents a potential ethical dilemma, which may require some de-escalation and conflict resolution. The first thing I'd want to do is gather some information, if possible, and try to remain non-judgmental. I'd need to ensure I was interpreting the situation correctly, but I also want to respect the privacy of the two passengers who are about to board. It would not be appropriate to ask them to disclose any disability status. So, I'd try to speak with the upset woman to clarify what exactly she was finding so frustrating. I would speak with her in a non-confrontational manner and, if at all possible, I'd try to call her to the side where we could speak privately, rather than causing a bigger disturbance among the other passengers. She may not understand that what she has said could be hurtful, and I want to prioritize the well-being of the disabled couple or person, try to use this as an educational experience, and to do so in a way that doesn't inconvenience my fellow passengers or the flight crew by delaying boarding. In a soft tone, I would ask the woman, "Can you please explain to me why you're so upset? I'm not sure I understand, so I'd like to hear your perspective." What I do from there would depend on her response. It could be that she was referring to something completely different and I've simply misread the situation. If that's the case, then I will apologize for misinterpreting what she said. If, however, she tells me that she was assuming that the couple, either one or both of them, were actually able-bodied and taking advantage of a policy to board before others, I would try to acknowledge her feelings by actively listening and repeating her statements back to her as questions to ensure I fully understood her complaint. After that, I would gently say the following. I appreciate the frustration you've expressed, as well as your understanding of the situation. However, I wonder if you are familiar with the term invisible disability. This is a term that covers many conditions, including chronic illness, chronic pain, and other hidden conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome. While such patients may not outwardly look disabled and may not always use mobility devices, they actually benefit considerably from minor accommodations like priority boarding or accessible parking spaces. This can be confusing for those unfamiliar with such conditions because such people don't look sick or don't look disabled, but their illness is very real. Hopefully, she will interpret what I've said in a positive light, and I'll be very careful not to appear judgmental or confrontational. If she understands, perhaps I can persuade her to apologize to the couple. However, it is possible that she will not accept my explanation. If that is the case, then at least I know I've done what I can do to help advocate for such patients. Firstly, notice that this can be considered as a policy question. Do your best to show your knowledge of the issue and provide your own informed opinion on the matter. Let's get to the sample answer. Disability parking passes are a useful way of ensuring public spaces are accessible to people with conditions that limit their mobility, and to ensure that limited resources, like parking spaces, are allocated in a way that prioritizes such access in the interest of equity. In large, frequently used, and often heavily populated areas, like parking lots or on-street parking, such regulation is necessary, since the goal is access for people with disabilities. It ensures spaces for such individuals will be available and holds others accountable if they use such spaces without the required documentation. That said, some would note that unauthorized use does occur, and there have been people who fraudulently use parking passes. For example, driving a friend or relative's car with a disability license plate and using accessible spaces despite not having a mobility issue themselves. However, while many people use automobiles and parking facilities every day, most people only fly a few times a year, if at all. As such, requiring documentation for such an infrequently used mode of transportation may place an undue burden on those with disabilities. Such parking placards or license plates can only be obtained with documentation from a physician, often a specialist, who must have had the patient in their care for a significant amount of time, and who must indicate the scope of the disabling condition, whether it is temporary or permanent. While many flights are booked well in advance, sometimes people must fly on short notice, such as in an emergency or in the case of a death in the family. Since obtaining a parking pass requires an appointment with a physician, as well as time processing the documentation before the pass is issued, it may be difficult for someone to complete all of the necessary steps in time for their flight, especially as they are disabled. Allowing priority boarding takes a very small amount of time, and while it may be inconvenient for others, it is a very small inconvenience. In this scenario, everything could have been resolved very quickly if the couples were simply allowed to board without disruption. Considering that this is a delicate ethical issue, which includes private and confidential information, it is likely best to simply give people the benefit of the doubt, as fraudulent use of something like this is quite rare. Note that this is a personal question. You are asked to reflect on your own experiences. Use a concrete example from your own life. Provide a quick context to your situation, and tell us how you dealt with the situation. Let's get to the sample answer. One day, on my way to school, taking public transit, I noticed a young woman walking quickly with a young man following behind her. The man was yelling at the woman, "Hey, I'm just trying to say hello to you. Why won't you talk to me?" She looked visibly upset, and he began walking faster and calling her names, using profanities, etc. I'd been walking toward them. We were going in opposite directions after exiting the subway train, so I slowed down and walked off to the side, out of the path of others, to observe the situation. As they got closer, I could see tears in the woman's eyes. She seemed very shaken up and scared. I wanted to help her, so I put on a warm smile and walked over to her. "Oh, there you are," I said. "I've been wandering around trying to find you." She looked confused, but began walking toward me. As she got close, I whispered, "It's okay. Tell me where you're going, and I'll walk with you." Her face softened immediately as she put her arm in mine and began walking in the direction she'd been heading. We made small talk as we walked up the stairs and exited the subway station, with the young man still following, but quiet now. As we got outside, she told me which building she was heading toward, but said she was scared to go there. Instead, we ducked into the nearest building. We found a bench and sat down for a moment. She began crying and explained that he had been following her for the last 20 minutes, even as she switched subway lines from east-west to north-south to get to campus. She tried to ignore him, but he kept getting louder, faster, more aggressive. We sat there and watched as he walked by in one direction, looking at us through the window as he passed. About 5 minutes later, he walked by again in the opposite direction, heading back toward the subway. We saw him enter the station and waited a few minutes to ensure he didn't come back. Once all seemed clear, I walked her to her building and then went back about my day. Though I myself am a woman and have experienced similar, this was the first time I was able to help someone else through a situation like this. It made me realize how vulnerable many people are to such things, and led me to wonder if the young man even realized how terrorized she'd felt. It also impressed me on the importance of being aware of one's surroundings. It just so happened that on this particular day, I'd forgotten my earbuds at home, so I wasn't listening to music as I would normally have done. If I were, I probably wouldn't have noticed what was happening, and may not have been able to step in and be of assistance. Remember, these are sample answers. Your answer may be completely different, but it should follow a similar structure. The most important thing is for you to get the answer strategy for each CASPer question category. If you get used to the scenario answer strategy, you will be able to tackle any ethical scenario you are faced with on the day of your exam. Check out our blog to learn more about CASPer questions and answer strategies. I've included a link in the description of this video so you can find the blog easily. If you would like us to help you get a higher CASPer score, visit CASPerTestPrep.com to schedule your free initial consultation. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, so please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. If you have any questions about CASPer policy questions that I didn't cover in this video, let me know in the comments section and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Don't forget, we are giving away $50 Amazon gift cards every week to the best comments and questions, so comment below for a chance to win. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.